3.
Hi, Carmen. How are you?
Awesome. Hi, Suzanne. Nice to see you again.
It's amazing to see you. And here we are to our Returning to Real video and channel. And this is a forum to talk about what returning to real means for us, a way of returning to our authentic selves and to lead a more authentic life. It's also a beautiful opportunity for us to talk about the book that is in the making. And of course, the book is called Returning to Real. Yeah. And in that book, we talk about our framework. The foundation of the book is actually a raw, risky, and real foundation or framework. And we help the reader through the journey from wounds to wellness. So we haven't come together in a long time. It's been a couple of months. We had an amazing, amazing summer.
Yes.
And here we are now in the fall as the leaves are turning in our part of the world, and we're resuming our conversations on returning to real, and really just a chat. It's a way of just getting together and talking about those things that are real for us. So I am super excited to be here chatting with you and with our listeners.
Just listening to you, I'm realizing how much I've missed our conversations. And yes, we've had an amazing, quick, busy summer. And now we're getting settled in again, resuming our writing, and so excited to be on the sort of last stages of our book development together, our creativity together. And I think our message in the book, like you mentioned, our overarching belief in moving and shifting from wounds to wellness and reclaiming, coming back to our authentic self and returning to real. And so excited today to talk to our listeners about the second chapter, actually, in our book is about the inner critic. And I think everyone can relate to in an inner critic and knowing what that feels like to have a part of you that has been strongly developed to and shows up periodically, daily. It can be driving the bus of our life, or it can just have walk-on scenes, but sometimes it does impact how we show up. And so excited to dive into the inner critic today with you, Suzanne.
I am too, Carmen. I love the way you said, reclaiming our authentic selves, because that's exactly, the focus of the book, which is, we're not finding it. It's not this big mystery that exists somewhere in the world, but it's something very deeply held inside of us, and we're just reclaiming it. And it's interesting, the inner critic, it's chapter 2. And that's actually quite purposeful, because all of our chapters are organized around the subpersonalities, and we explore a variety of subpersonalities. And we'll come back in a couple of weeks when we're ready to talk about the third chapter. Maybe we'll leave that as a surprise in terms of what the topic is. But we chose the inner critic as the second chapter because we all have an inner critic. That voice that, it can be an incessant, very harsh, very negative, very demeaning voice that tells us, the monkey on the shoulder, right? Some people will describe it, and we talk a little bit about it in the book, about, just in terms of the monkey, but that voice that really tells us all of those things that we can't do, that attacks our self-worth. And that truly is a critic rather than a coach or something that uplifts us. The inner critic does not uplift us. And we wanted to start with the inner critic because if we can learn how to, and again, we're not trying to necessarily get rid of it, but we want to learn how to live with it.
Yeah.
And shift.
Yeah.
To
Something you
shift
just said there is really powerful in terms of we don't want to get rid of it. And I think we align so well in our belief around that is that our inner critic will always be a part of us, but the way to unhook ourselves from the inner critic running our life, like we want to write a chapter that our next chapter in our life that is unleashes our potential. We can do what we want to do, and we can't always do that if the inner critic is really loud. But if we try to push it away or we get angry with the inner critic, what we resist persists and it grows louder and louder. So the way we unhook from it is counterintuitive, but we both feel that it's all about compassion and getting to know that voice, because our inner critic has it's addictive in a way in that it holds an old belief, a very young belief, a belief that was formed in us when we were very little. And it's not gonna let go of that belief. And so what we talk in our book is a shift in the way that we perceive, interact, and understand our inner critic. And it's about that, hugely about that self-compassion and self-love, and pausing to discern, is this voice in my mind inside of me, is it my inner critic or is it my authentic self? And when we can pause and reflect, then if it is our inner critic, then we know it's holding a negative belief and it's just trying to protect us from more pain or for embarrassing ourselves or simply because it's holding an old negative belief. So once we understand that, it's kind of where the magic can really happen. It's an internal shift of honoring the purpose, the intent of the inner critic.
Yeah, love what you're saying, Carmen. There's a couple of things that I want to touch on. The first thing that really resonated with me, and obviously we write from the same I guess philosophical belief, but there is a purpose to the inner critic. There is a purpose. Yeah. It was actually created, like you said, to protect us. So we really want to honor that. We really want to recognize that at some point in our lives, it really did serve an immense purpose for us. Mm-hmm. Now, as adults, we can recognize that maybe it's not serving us so well. And that's okay. That's okay. And maybe we need to engage with it differently. But we can never lose sight of the fact that it was created for us. It did get us through probably some very, very difficult times. But now we can choose the relationship that we want to have with it. And that's where the compassion comes in, right? And it was the Buddha who said, if your compassion doesn't include yourself, then it's incomplete. So how do we bring compassion? And you're right, it is counterintuitive. How do we bring compassion for this voice that's on us all of the time, right? Or feels like it's on us all of the time. But it really is that first step in the shift and in that magic that you talk about. So that's actually sort of another theme of the entire book is the compassion. And we weave it in right from the beginning. And our approach will be that of compassion for all of the sub-personalities that we talk about. And we also talk about there's exercises. So it's an experiential book.
Yes.
And each of the chapters hold just different exercises, a variety of exercises that, may resonate with some people, may not resonate with others, but we really wanted to offer just a selection of experiential exercises because the book isn't, the book is, um, the purpose is for you to recognize yourself.
Yeah, well said. And the experiential exercises, are meant to be a guide to, how do I get to know my inner critic? How do I unhook from those negative thoughts and create some kinder, compassionate thoughts about myself, beliefs about myself? Because we manifest what we believe. And if we're really hooked in with our inner critic, then we're going to manifest more what we already have. Maybe that's more anxiety, more depression, more problems, more issues, because our inner critic is focused on problems. But when we can unhook from that and learn how to love ourselves and care and really connect with our inner critic, it will soften. It's always going to be there. It's just a part of us, and that's okay because it has a good intent, like you mentioned. But if we want to create powerful, beautiful things in our lives, our inner critic keeps us comfortable, keeps us very comfortable, and we can't step out of our comfort zone if we're really hooked in with our inner critic. If we're truly authentic, we're going to stretch and grow and create and manifest. And we talk about this in our raw, risky, real approach, right? The risky part to that is engaging in new exercises, shifting our thinking. And these exercises that we're putting in the book will help our readers follow that process and step outside of your comfort zone in the risky action part and not stay in the comfortable where our inner critic wants to keep us as we are. Comfortable or uncomfortable, but not definitely in growth mode. So I think that's a really important part of our book is the actual action piece to it as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we've sort of divided the book up to reflect what you just described, right? So we've got sort of that more I'll call it educational / awareness part of the book where we delve in to the topic, to the subpersonality that we're talking about. And that really is the raw part because we're hoping that people see themselves, recognize themselves in some of these subpersonalities and some of these personality traits and begin to get curious about what does this look like in my life? Is this a part of my life? Where does this happen in my life? And just start asking some of those questions. And sometimes, when we begin to answer those questions, when that introspection can create some of those raw spots, which is why we call it raw. We need to go to the feeling. We need to go to those raw, sometimes painful areas of our lives and of ourselves. Before we can get to the action part. And that's why we decided, we landed on risky because there is a risk element to it because we can choose to stay in the raw part all of our lives. But that's not the next step towards growth really is taking action, and it really is taking that next step and going to the edges of our comfort zone and trying things that we never imagined we
That's
either
how we grow.
could do.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. Exactly it. So throughout the book, the readers will see that we encourage you to tap in to the feelings, to the raw areas of your life. And then we support you through some experiential exercises or practices. Taking another step, implementing a practice that supports your growth and that helps you to manifest or write the next chapter of your own life. And I think we do this with the recognition that one, you don't have to bite this off in one chunk, right?
Mhm.
And that it's not necessarily easy. And even if, and it's one of the things I think as I've read a variety of books or done some of my own, started, practicing some of my own practices, is if you just pick one that resonates with you and practice it, you can achieve so much.
Yeah, it takes practice, and it's not a one and done and fix all type of experience either. It's coming back to the practices and getting to know those subpersonalities, those parts of yourself, and just so you can distinguish between what's a part of me. For example, what's my inner critic? Whose voice is it? And it takes that introspection, and some of these exercises will walk us through body, mind, soul sort of areas that will align with most people in certain parts of that, right? And that's our hope, that our readers will find something, like you said, that resonates with them and the options that are available. And that is all that it takes, isn't it? It's just the belief that I can change the beliefs about myself. I can create positive beliefs about myself, love myself, have compassion for all parts of myself. And that's where we're going to go. That's where we're going to get to. That's returning to real.
Yes, that's returning to real, going from critic to coach, wounds to wellness. That truly is the return to real. Beautifully said, Carm. Beautifully said. And we've got some examples. I don't think we talked about the examples that we provide. So we've taken some real life examples. Sometimes they're examples about our own lives, because here's the other thing that I think is really important to mention is we're writing the book based on the perspective of the notion of being the wounded healer. Yes. So this isn't about us being a subject matter expert. We bring some insights, some expertise, but it's about the recognition that we're all wounded. And so it was really important for us to be able to incorporate real life stories, whether they're our own, or, whether they're things that we've encountered in our private practices. And again, with the purpose of somebody being able to recognize themselves and being able to say, oh, I'm not alone. Somebody else out there experiences the same things that I do. So in this particular chapter, the example, you write a beautiful example of the inner critic that came, that was active for you.
Yeah, I'm happy you shared this, because our intent was to write this book from the point of view of we're wounded healers. We are human, just like anyone else reading this book. We don't want it to come across as a textbook or, psychobabble, as some people say, but a book that's an easy read for everybody, right? And we share from our hearts. And in that chapter, I shared something that was really fresh on my plate as I step, right outside of my comfort zone. And then, and in 5 days from now, I'll be running my very, very first marathon. And so that's been a journey of a lot of dialogue with my inner critic along the way. And it's real, and it's a part of who I am. My inner critic holds the belief that I am not enough, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not fast enough to be a runner. It's all kinds of beliefs that are old and that aren't real. And so I call my inner critic Leo the lion. And so for me, it's about getting to know Leo, taming my lion. And I've been really able to practice that on this journey. And so I do share some inner dialogue that I've had on my long distance runs. And when I hit the wall at 32, 34 kilometers, and my inner critic's like, you just need to give up. What's the point here? Right. So it's like just getting to know her. I've been able to really show up compassionately and kind and really witness the change within myself and how she's kind of softens. I know she's going to show up on Sunday in my race, and that's okay. We'll have a couple more conversations. But the reason I share this story and many other stories with ourselves and clients is because we are hoping that it will connect. This isn't about, you don't have to be a runner, you don't have to be an athlete, you don't have to be anything, but it is about just recognizing our own inner critics and how and where do they show up. And so we weave in a lot of examples so that there will be a story in there that our readers will connect to and relate to. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And thank you, Carm, for sharing the story of your inner critic that you're actually living as we speak. So there's the notion of the wounded healer coming through. And she's there with you. She's going to go to the race with you.
Yeah.
Right.
She'll be there as I lace up my shoes and stand nervously at the start line. But yeah, she's just trying to protect me from shame, trying to protect me from making a fool out of myself, trying to protect me from injuring myself. And I really appreciate that. So I learned to work with her on this journey. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And even in the writing of the book, we've had, I know for me, and I imagine for you as well, because we've had some conversations about that. But, my inner critic has come up in terms of, so you're not a writer. How can you be writing a book? You're not a writer.
Yeah.
That, that was the voice. And even sometimes it comes through. And, but the difference is, I think, and you described it so beautifully, is in listening to her, recognizing that she really just she has our best interest. She has my best interest at heart.
Yeah.
And if I give her time, and if I give her the attention that she's looking for, but, douse it with compassion. And
That's the
ask
key right
her,
there.
yeah,
Mhm.
ask her if I can take over the wheel. Ask her if she'll let me drive.
Yeah.
How about you let me type the next couple of sentences? And I'll come back to you if I really need to. But for now, I'm just going to write a couple of paragraphs.
And then when she kind of, because of that compassion, Sue, we witness the unhooking, right? The unhooking, and then our true authentic self takes over the bus, takes over the writing, takes over the running, kind of that the curiosity, the creativity, the compassion, our beautiful parts of our authentic self that really come up when we can unhook from our inner critic. and just sort of create that space. Mhm.
Beautiful, beautiful. Is this where we leave our listeners
I
with
think so. Yes. Mhm.
hooking, the unhooking? So we hope we've hooked you just a little bit, and that you'll see regarding the book, the project that we're working on, and we'll come back, or maybe over the course of the next few weeks with another video to talk about another podcast to talk about the next chapter, and see how that one resonates with folks, and if people see themselves in that particular chapter.
Well said. It was very nice connecting with you again, and we'll see you for the next chapter.
We will. Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.